The laughter hit harder than any punch ever could. It echoed across the training yard, sharp and careless, cutting through the morning air as if it had the right to judge, to dismiss, to decide a man's worth in seconds. A circle of towering men, muscles carved like stone, confidence dripping from their smirks, stood watching as one figure stepped forward. His clothes were simple, worn but clean. His shoes were scuffed. His eyes, though, his eyes carried storms no one there could see. His name was Armaan Qureshi. And in that moment, he was the smallest man in the arena, at least, that's what they believed. Before we begin, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and hidden strength, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Wisdom Story House. Your support helps bring stories like this to life. The tryout was being held under the blazing daylight in a private security training compound on the outskirts of the city. It wasn't just any job. The CEO they were hiring for was one of the most powerful men in the country, someone whose enemies didn't fight fair. Every man here was desperate for the opportunity. The pay was life-changing. The prestige unmatched. But Armaan wasn't here for prestige. He was here because his daughter needed medicine. As he stood in line, clutching the folded application in his rough hands, he could feel the weight of every eye on him. Not curious eyes. Judging ones. The kind that look at your clothes, your posture, your silence, and decide your story before you ever speak. He didn't look like the others. They wore branded athletic gear, expensive watches, and carried themselves like warriors born into strength. Armaan wore a faded gray shirt, slightly too loose, sleeves rolled neatly. His black trousers had been stitched more than once. His hair was trimmed simply, not styled. He looked ordinary. And ordinary didn't belong here. A man with broad shoulders and a tattoo crawling up his neck chuckled loudly, nudging the person beside him. Others joined. Soon, it wasn't just laughter, it was entertainment. A single dad trying out to be a CEO bodyguard? It sounded like a joke. Armaan heard every word. Every whisper. Every smirk. But he didn't react. Because he had heard worse. 3 years ago, Armaan had a different life. A stable job as a factory supervisor. A small but warm home. A wife whose laughter filled every corner. And a little girl named Zoya, who believed her father could fix anything in the world. Then one accident changed everything. A machinery malfunction at the factory cost Armaan his job. The company denied responsibility. Months of legal battles drained whatever savings he had. Stress consumed the household. His wife fell ill, not suddenly, but slowly, silently. By the time they realized how serious it was too late. Armaan buried her with his own hands. Since then, life had been a quiet war. Days were spent doing whatever work he could find, lifting, carrying, fixing, anything that paid enough to bring food home. Nights were spent by Zoya's bedside, reading her stories, pretending everything would be okay. But recently, even that fragile balance had started to crumble. Zoya had fallen sick. Not dangerously, the doctor said, but enough to need regular medication. Medication that cost more than Armaan could afford. That's when he saw the job posting. Elite Bodyguard Tryouts. Only the strongest will qualify. He almost laughed when he first read it. But desperation doesn't ask if you belong. It pushes you forward anyway. The first round of the tryout was simple, physical endurance. Running, lifting, agility tests. Men dropped out quickly, their confidence cracking under the sun. Armaan moved quietly, steadily. He didn't try to impress. He just kept going. The laughter had softened by then. Not gone, but quieter. Then came the combat trials. One by one, candidates were paired for sparring matches. Strength against strength. Skill against skill. It was where reputations were made, or shattered. Armaan's name was called. His opponent stepped forward with a grin that carried both arrogance and amusement. His name was Faizan Malik, known in underground circles as the Hammer. He was easily twice Armaan's size, with arms that looked capable of breaking bones without effort. The crowd leaned in. This would be entertaining. Armaan stepped onto the mat, the sunlight casting long shadows beneath their feet. For a moment, everything felt still. Faizan cracked his neck, smirking. He didn't take a fighting stance. He didn't need to. In his mind, this wasn't a fight. It was a formality. The signal was given. What happened next, no one expected. Faizan lunged forward, fast and heavy, aiming to end it in seconds. But Armaan moved, not away, but around. His body flowed, precise and controlled, like he had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. The first strike missed. The second didn't even land. Before anyone could process it, Armaan had shifted his weight, redirected the momentum, and used Faizan's own force against him. In one swift, fluid motion, the giant stumbled, and then hit the ground with a thud that echoed across the yard. Silence. Complete, stunned silence. Faizan lay there, shocked more than hurt. He tried to get up, but Armaan was already standing over him, not aggressive, not triumphant. Just, calm. The same man they had laughed at seconds ago had just dropped the strongest contender in the arena. The air changed. Respect doesn't arrive loudly. It settles quietly. The judges exchanged glances. Something had shifted. Armaan wasn't ordinary. He was trained. But no one knew how. What they didn't see was the past Armaan had buried. Before the factory. Before the family. Before life had softened him. He had served. Not in a way that earned medals or recognition, but in the kind of work that existed in shadows. Private security operations. High-risk protection assignments. Situations where hesitation meant death. He had walked away from that life when Zoya was born. He wanted peace. A normal life. Something safe. But skill doesn't disappear. It waits. And now, it had returned. The final round approached. Only 3 candidates remained. Armaan. Faizan, who insisted on continuing. And another man named Kabir Ansari, lean, sharp, and calculating, a fighter who relied on technique over brute force. The last test was not just about fighting. It was about instinct. A simulated attack scenario. Multiple threats. Limited time. Protect the client at all costs. When the scenario began, chaos erupted. Fake gunshots echoed. Smoke filled the air. Attackers rushed from all directions. Faizan charged forward, trying to overpower everything in his path. Kabir moved strategically, picking targets one by one. Armaan did something different. He didn't chase. He positioned. He scanned the exits, calculated movement patterns, and placed himself between the threats and the client without unnecessary motion. His actions were efficient, controlled. Every move had purpose. Within minutes, it was over. And for the first time since morning, there was no laughter. Only recognition. The CEO himself had been watching from a distance. He stepped forward slowly, his expression unreadable. Armaan stood still, his chest rising with quiet breaths, sweat glistening under the harsh daylight. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't celebrating. He was thinking about Zoya. About the medicine. About the rent. About the nights she asked when things would get better. The CEO stopped in front of him. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then, in a calm voice, the decision was made. Armaan Qureshi had been chosen. Not because he was the strongest. But because he understood something the others didn't. Protection wasn't about power. It was about responsibility. Days later, Armaan stood outside a pharmacy, holding a small paper bag in his hands. Inside it was the medicine Zoya needed. For the first time in months, his shoulders felt lighter. When he reached home, Zoya ran to him, her small arms wrapping around his waist. Her laughter filled the room again, the same laughter he thought he had lost forever. That night, as she slept peacefully, Armaan sat beside her, watching. He didn't think about the men who laughed. He didn't think about the fight. He only thought about one thing. He had made it. Not for himself. But for her. And sometimes, that's the strongest reason of all. If this story touched your heart, don't scroll away silently. Like, share, and comment to let us know your thoughts. Your support means more than you realize. And before the ending, a special request. Comment, strength comes from love, if you believe that real power isn't in muscles, but in the reasons we fight. Because in the end, the world may laugh, doubt, and underestimate you. But all it takes is one moment, to prove them wrong.